Tailored Services. Your supply chain, our tailored services.
In our continuing series entitled Industry Expert Interview, today we're in Long Beach at the office of Bill Mongelluzzo, longtime senior editor of the Journal of Commerce and subject expert on Trans-Pacific trade, West Coast ports, and West Coast logistics. Thanks for being with us today, Bill.
Kaleigh, thanks for asking me.
So I'm in media, and I'm always curious about how people got their start. So when did you always want to be a reporter?
I did, and I was in the 5th grade in Chicago, where I grew up, and had to write a paper on what I wanted to be when I grow up. And I don't know why, but I wanted to be a journalist, and I never varied from that at all.
Wow, that's great.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, so when was your first job, and where was that at?
My first job, I went to University of Missouri School of Journalism, and I got my degree there in journalism. And what was good about going to Missouri was that we actually printed and wrote for the daily newspaper in Columbia, Missouri, the town where the university is. So I had real life experience as a college student.
Yeah.
So then my first job out of college was in New Orleans with the Times-Picayune, the local paper there. That was 1972. I started writing just general, what everybody does, obituaries, interview 100-year-old ladies, just the normal journalism that we all have to do when we break into this industry.
The Journal of Commerce has really grown from the days where it was delivered by newspaper. Today you even sponsor conferences such as TPM in Long Beach that attracts over 2,000 attendees. So talk about how your job and the Journal of Commerce has changed over the years.
When I first started with the Journal of Commerce, our New York office was actually on Wall Street. 110 Wall Street. I remember I used to visit there all the time. And today you know the Wall Street Journal. Well, we have always been the Wall Street Journal of the transportation logistics industry. But so for many years, that's what I was, just a regular reporter. At that time, we were still, Monday through Friday. And it was in the 90s when the internet revolution was really starting to take hold. We determined as a company that as a national publication, immediacy of delivery was important, but being small, we couldn't have printing presses across the country to get same-day delivery. So we shifted our format to be daily on the internet and weekly in a magazine, which worked for circulation. And so that, once again, though I was still basically a reporter, it's just that I was doing more than your daily, knock out that 400-word story in the next 20 minutes type of stuff. I was actually writing longer think pieces for the magazine. So that continued, continues today. We found that our readers turned to us as experts in the industry, just like they would turn to a shipping executive or a logistics professional. So we began sponsoring seminars and conferences on the topics that we cover. And it's wildly successful. As you mentioned, our Trans-Pacific Maritime Conference in Long Beach, the first week of March every year. This is our 13th year coming up now. And the attendance has grown to over 2,000. And these are top industry executives, certainly from around the country and even from some other countries, come to this conference because of the content. So what we did basically is we took our emphasis on content as a news publication and we expanded that into the world of conferences. And one of my responsibilities now is to help to organize the speakers, the topics, whatever, each year for Trans-Pacific Maritime. We do the same with an inland logistics conference in the fall. We have a port productivity, marine terminal productivity conference in late fall, so it continues to grow.
So when you first started, social media wasn't around, really.
Right.
So how has the role of social media changed the Journal of Commerce?
I talk to our folks in New Jersey about that all the time because they now I'm talking about the business side of the publication. They say that social media is crucial to win new readers, and it's the immediacy is unbelievable. To tweet that the Port of Long Beach is going to get a new executive director or whatever, you put that out at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and the tweets are coming back at 2:01. So that, and every other form of social media, that's what we're geared for, is to not substitute for the content we're doing in our publication, but rather to bring attention to it from all of our folks who are following us on social media.
Let's talk about the world of logistics specifically now. What do you see as the top 3 West Coast logistic related issues in 2014?
Okay, it's going to be heavily maritime on this topic because that's what I know best. But what is happening is that shipping lines, container shipping lines, they have lost a lot of money, billions of dollars since the economic recession. So they are coming together in what are called vessel sharing alliances. So a shipping line like Maersk may get together with a shipping line like Mediterranean Shipping and another line, CMA CGM. They form an alliance and then they share space on each other's vessels. Now what is happening is this is taking the carriers from a position of weakness because, like I said, the cargo volumes dropped during the recession, the carriers lost money, but they're in effect, adding more control, more leverage over the market. So they are able to use this leverage on ports for port charges, on marine terminals, on the customers, the cargo interests. So I think that's huge, and we're seeing that now snowball. Secondly, the alliances, the carriers are ordering big ships, and by big I mean like 3 football field size ships. These things are unbelievable. So to use a maritime term, a TEU, a 20-foot equivalent unit container, so we'll just say container. But 5 years ago, a 5,000 TEU ship was considered really big. Now 18,000 TEU ships are being deployed in service as we speak. So more than they have tripled in size. The vessels that are calling here on the West Coast are more in the 8,000 to 14,000 TEU range, but that's huge. It lowers the per unit cost of transportation, but it also places a tremendous stress on the marine terminals that have to load and unload those ships, and that I would say is a number 3 on my list of the impacts of logistics. And right now on the West Coast is that the marine terminals are spending literally billions of dollars to expand their facilities. That's huge. The stress that it places on the whole logistics transportation network is unbelievable.
Wow. Okay, so let's talk about the top 3 trends of logistics over the past few years that you think will continue to make a big impact on the West Coast. Okay,
I would say that looking at now the whole logistics chain, intermodalism is it's been around for quite a while. Taking a container from a vessel, that's one mode, the shipping side. The trucker brings it to a railhead, that's a second mode, trucking, and then puts it on a train, and the train brings it inland to Chicago or other major population centers. So you're combining 3 modes of transportation. As far as the importer in Chicago, he or she doesn't think about all of that. All they want is that container to be at their facility at the promised time. But the coordination that is required among those parties is tremendous. And I see intermodalism continuing to grow, and I'll just throw out one possibility, and the Journal of Commerce wrote this story in the last several weeks at a conference in Canada. Hunter Harrison, who is the CEO of Canadian Pacific Railway, said that he sees within 5 or 6 years the U.S. railroads looking like the Canadian railroads. In the U.S., we have pretty much 4 major east-west railroads. You know, why not have 2 transcontinental railroads like they have in Canada? So it's a possibility. I mean, this Hunter Harrison is an expert in the industry, and he sees that happening. So I think that, you know, if it does come to be, and I think it might, I think it would make West Coast ports much more attractive because the rail move would be smoother and it would be less costly and help us compete with the East Coast ports. And on that same line of competition, everybody knows in the industry that the Panama Canal is being enlarged. Right now, the size ships that call on the West Coast cannot fit through the Panama Canal. And from the services from Asia to the U.S. East Coast are you know, they're very important. I mean, that's where our population is in this country. 2/3 of the population lives east of the Mississippi River, but we're very efficient on the West Coast in railing the cargo across country, but we get the big ships here. They can't do that on the East Coast through the Panama Canal. So that project is supposed to be done 2015-ish. So when that is completed, you'll have large vessels such as called here on the West Coast being able to go from Hong Kong, China, through the Panama Canal all the way to the East Coast. And we're also seeing the same type of services from Asia through the Suez Canal, which is able to handle the big ships, to the East Coast. So the competition for West Coast ports is definitely increasing.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how does something like that, where the cargo ships can actually go directly to the East Coast, how would something like that affect the Los Angeles port and the Long Beach port?
There will be some cargo diversion. I mean, that's a fact. Now, a lot of that is determined by the value of the cargo, and without getting too deeply into the weeds, high value cargo, electronics, whatever, time sensitive, fashion, extremely time sensitive. You know, you miss the spring sale and your merchandise is useless. So the high value cargo will most likely continue to come through the West Coast because it can get to the East Coast destinations a week, 2 weeks faster. So that's crucial. But there is a lot of merchandise that is low value. You know, these dollar stores, you know, they will fight for 2 pennies, you know, in transportation costs. They can build into their supply chain logistics a slower move as long as it's predictable, as long as it, you know, the vessel gets there when it's supposed to. So I think we will see diversion of lower value cargoes to the East Coast. And then it makes it real interesting what happens in the interior of the country. You know, you have a long vessel, you know, route from Asia to New York, but what if it's destined for Chicago or Cleveland or some area like that? So then there's a lot of, you know, playing back and forth. We won't bother you with all the details, but that's the type of churning that's going on in the industry right now.
Okay. What would be some of your predictions for logistics in the next 10 years?
Gee, I mean, when our parents used to order from the catalog, you know, they expected to get their product delivered in 10 days. They were perfectly happy with that. Well, now, you know, you expect next day delivery or you're not going to order it. Well, that pretty soon, and it's starting to be replaced by Amazon Fresh with same-day delivery. And it's not just for food products, it's you know, once again, higher value cargo, that merchandise that the consumer wants and wants it right now. So I think that is going to be a major driver in the coming years. And right now, you know, Scott's company for sure knows about this. Many of the distribution facilities are located out in the Inland Empire. and which works fine. You have land there for large facilities. But down the road, let's say we have a lot of merchandise that's going to be moving same-day delivery in Los Angeles, in San Francisco, in New York. I think what we'll see are smaller little depots where the consumer in Long Beach places her order that morning, and the depot in Los Angeles will make sure it's delivered to her house that afternoon. So I think it's the immediacy of, everybody wants it now. And so I think that's going to have a huge impact on logistics. That, if anything, that will probably be a game changer.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Bill, your informative stories, and actually letting us kind of turn the tables and me interview you for a change.
Spell my name correctly, that's all I ask.
Got it. Well, this is Kaleigh Krish for Tailored Services.
Tailored Services. Your supply chain. Our tailored services.